National House of Chiefs, permit me to also acknowledge
TOP FM.
and acknowledge our experts, researchers, historians who were with us yesterday for the technical meetings, activists, leaders of civil society, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with profound honor and great pleasure that I welcome you all on behalf of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, an African Union champion on reparatory justice, to Accra for this defining high-level Next Steps Conference on reparatory justice. Your Excellencies, permit me at the outset to express Ghana's deepest appreciation to each of you for accepting President Mahama's invitation and traveling from across Africa, the Caribbean, the Americas, Europe, Asia, and beyond to participate in this historic gathering. Your presence here is not only testament to the growing international commitment to reparatory justice, but also a powerful affirmation that the pursuit of historical truth, human dignity, and collective justice remains a shared responsibility of the global. March for reparatory justice has never seen this momentum. This is our moment. Victory is on the horizon. Our ancestors and posterity will be proud of our collective resolve. It is remarkable that exactly to this day, on the 18th of June, 1824, our ancestors chalked their first history in the British Parliament when the Parliament was compelled to pass the Consolidated Slave Trade Act, which formally declared slavery illegal. It is also fortuitous that it is this same week, the 19th of June, in 1864, that the last batch of slaves were declared free in the United States of America. So we have won many battles. We won the battle against slavery. We won the battle against colonialism. We won the battle against apartheid. And we are confident that we shall win the battle against reparatory injustice. We shall win that battle. And just as other atrocities receive reparatory justice, so shall the transatlantic enslavement also have its day in the court of justice. On behalf of President John Dramani Mahama, the government and people of Ghana, I wish to extend a very warm welcome to all our distinguished heads of state and government, our foreign ministers, leaders of international organizations, eminent scholars, legal experts, members of civil society, and representatives of the African diaspora, whose participation enriches this important conversation. A little bit. I want to convey to all of you Ghana's appreciation for your full support for the Black Stars last night. Yeah? Because when I welcomed you at the airport, you all wished the Black Stars well. And indeed, some of you requested for Black Star jerseys, led by the president of Liberia, President Boakai, the senior, who I was delighted to hand over the Black Stars jersey to, and I also handed over the jerseys to all our technical experts when we met for dinner last night. And you assured us of victory. The fact that Julius Garvey is here with us. He received his jersey, and he's proud that the Black Stars is still flying high. So, on the 25th of March 2026, His Excellency mobilized the international community with inspiring and courageous leadership by an overwhelming majority of 123 member states voting in favor of the UN resolution. UN resolution A/RAS/A0/250 was adopted, and today is the gravest crime against humanity. A major step forward in the global quest for reparatory justice, and represented a collective acknowledgement of the gravest tragedies in human history and their enduring consequences for Africa and people of African descent. We commend our bold and our dynamic leader, the African Union champion for reparatory justice, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, for that sterling leadership. But we acknowledge that President Mahama could not have achieved this alone. It took the contributions of all of you here, scholars, researchers, activists, the youth, and the guidance of our leaders who are represented here. World leaders who know what time it is and who instructed their foreign ministers, their permanent representatives and ambassadors in New York to support this resolution. Our ancestors, Africans, and all people of African descent are eternally grateful to the 123 presidents and prime ministers who made this historic achievement possible. Your Excellencies, this conference marks the first major global platform following the adoption of the landmark resolution. As President Mahama has said, it offers us an opportunity to reflect collectively on what has been achieved, assess the challenges ahead, and most importantly, define a common pathway to advance reparatory justice within the international system. Since the adoption of this historic resolution, discussions on reparatory justice have gained unprecedented momentum across continents, governments, institutions, scholars, legal practitioners, community leaders, and citizens with renewed conversations about historical accountability, restitution, reconciliation, and sustainable mechanisms for redress. The growing international support for these conversations demonstrates that reparatory justice is no longer a peripheral issue. It is now firmly established as a legitimate global concern that demands serious engagement and thoughtful solutions. For those who thought that the UN resolution would be a mere academic exercise, are now revising their notes. We have all heard the apology from Pope Leo XIV, the head of the Catholic fraternity, apologizing for the role of the Catholic Church, the papal bulls that offered theological, doctrinal justification for slavery. And we, led by President Mahama and all members of our global coalition, have warmly accepted the apology. We have also acknowledged the apology of the leader of the Church of Scotland for the role of the church. We have also acknowledged the bold statements of the President of France, President Emmanuel Macron, who has publicly stated that France must reckon with its past, and who will be addressing this forum today. He has led France to repeal the obnoxious Code Noir, that very dehumanizing set of laws which classified Africans as commodities, as movable properties, that slave owners could mutilate, could maim Africans and get away with it. It was not criminal. And it is quite shocking that it stayed on the statute books of France for all of these centuries. But thanks to our resolution, the work we are doing, Code Noir no longer exists, and it has been repealed. We also welcome the formal communication from the European Union that they are willing to work with Ghana on this journey for reparatory justice. And we acknowledge the formal notification from the Dutch government and the government of Germany that they are ready to return artifacts to the motherland. So the UN resolution is not a mere academic exercise. We are already recording significant progress, unprecedented accomplishments, and all of us in this room must be proud of the contributions we have made to this landmark resolution. Your Excellencies, the significance of this conference extends beyond the discussions over the next 2 days. The decisions, recommendations, and partnerships emerging from this meeting have the potential to shape the future trajectory of the global reparations agenda. We are therefore challenged to think boldly, build bridges across regions, act collectively, and move beyond historical recognition towards sustainable mechanisms to address the ongoing effects of historical injustices. As President Mahama has emphasized, no single institution, nation, or region can advance this agenda alone. Success will require partnerships, shared understanding, and sustained commitment. It is therefore fitting that this conference is being held in Ghana. For centuries, Ghana was held as the headquarters of the transatlantic enslavement. That is why Ghana hosts the highest number of forts and castles than any other country. But today, Ghana is transitioning from being a crime scene to a sanctuary for healing and reparatory justice. Your Excellencies, as we commence our deliberations, we must be guided by a spirit of dialogue, partnership, and mutual respect. We must approach our discussions with the understanding that although history cannot be changed, the future remains ours to shape. We should be inspired by the courage and resilience of our world leaders gathered here and all those who came before us, and by our responsibility to future generations, who will judge us not only by what we say, but by what we achieve. The world is watching, and the global community looks to this conference for leadership, vision, and practical outcomes. There is growing expectation that this gathering will help chart a clear course for the next phase of the reparatory justice movement. I am confident that with the distinguished expertise in this room, the caliber of world leaders we have here to lead us, to guide us, and to offer the needed direction, we will rise to this responsibility. Let me conclude with a quote from the founder of our country, the Osajefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who remarked, "Countrymen, the task ahead is great indeed, and heavy is the responsibility. And yet it is a noble and glorious challenge, a challenge which calls for courage to dream, the courage to believe, the courage to dare, the courage to do, the courage to envision, the courage to fight, the courage to work, the courage to achieve the highest excellencies and the fullest greatness of man. There we ask for more in life." Your Excellencies, this conference will deepen our shared understanding, strengthen our collective resolve, and deliver meaningful outcomes that advance justice, dignity, and equity for Africans as we build and construct a new world without discrimination, without racism, and without inequalities. May future generations look back on this conference in Accra as a defining moment when the international community came together, not merely to remember history, but to shape a more just future. Once again, welcome to Ghana and to the high-level Next Steps Conference on Reparatory Justice. I thank you for your attention, Excellencies.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Honorable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, thank you so much for your welcome remarks. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to have high-level remarks by very important dignitaries in our midst this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now receive remarks from Ms. Lydia Arthur Brito, Assistant General Director of UNESCO. Please welcome her to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Lydia Arthur Brito, Assistant General Director of UNESCO.
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, Excellencies, Heads of State and of Government here present, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to deliver these remarks on behalf of Professor Khaled El Anani, Director General of UNESCO, who is unfortunately unable to join us in Accra today. Allow me to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency President Mahama and to his government for the leadership in advancing this important agenda and for convening and hosting this high-level consultative conference on the next step matters of the past. They continue to shape societies across the world and compel us to reflect on how historical injustice can be acknowledged and addressed in the present. For more than 8 decades, UNESCO has worked with member states to deepen understanding of this history and its consequences. Since the founding in 1945, the organization has supported efforts to document, study, and transmit knowledge about slavery and enslavement. Recognizing the historical truth is an essential foundation for justice, dignity, and reconciliation. A major milestone on this work was the launch of the General History of Africa program in 1964. Through this initiative, UNESCO has supported Africa in reclaiming and writing its own history, correcting long-standing distortions and prejudices. Today, UNESCO continues to assist member states in integrating the general history of Africa into education systems in Africa and beyond, to enable learners to engage critically with histories of enslavement and their legacies, recognizing education as an essential foundation for dignity, inclusion, and lasting peace. Another important initiative is UNESCO's Slave Route Project, launched in 1994 in Oidah, Benin, now known as the Roots of Enslaved People Program. Established to break the silence surrounding the history of enslavement and its legacies, the program has become UNESCO's principal framework for advancing research, education, memory, and international cooperation in this field. And these are all key areas fundamental for the discussion of the resolution and action beyond. UNESCO also works with member states to preserve and transmit the memory of this history through the network of places of history and memory linked to the enslavement and the slave trade, as well as the Memory of the World program. UNESCO supports the safeguarding of sites, archives, and documentary heritage that bear witness to this shared past. Here in Ghana, the fort and castles inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List are very much part of this network, and they stand as powerful testimonies to one of the darkest chapters in human history, and as places of reflection for present and future generations. I want to thank Ghana for the incredible support to this program of UNESCO, as we have seen in the documentary and the artistic performance. Dialogue is another yet key aspect of the resolution. In alignment with this, UNESCO has long-standing mandate to facilitate international cooperation in the fields of culture and heritage. Through its normative instruments and intergovernmental mechanisms, UNESCO supports member states in promoting the return and restitution of cultural property to countries and communities of origin. UNESCO is also been supporting reflection on the reparatory justice through the UNESCO Dialogues on Reparatory Justice launched in 2024. These dialogues bring together descendant communities, policymakers, researchers, cultural institutions, and civil society actors to exchange experience and identify pathways for future action. Excellencies, the resolution calls for remembrance, education, and good faith dialogue on reparatory justice. These priorities reflect the very areas in which UNESCO has worked for decades alongside its member states. By advancing knowledge, preserving memory, and fostering dialogue and cooperation, UNESCO remains committed to supporting collective efforts to address the enduring legacies of enslavement and to promote a future found on human dignity, mutual understanding, and justice. This work is not the end, but only the beginning. UNESCO stands ready to continue working with all of you, all the partners, in the spirit of solidarity and mutual respect, accompanying member states in advancing this important agenda and in building a more inclusive, equitable, and cohesive societies. I thank you all.
Once again, Mesdames et Messieurs, thank you very much. Ms. Lydia Arthur Brito, Assistant General of UNESCO. Thank you for your insightful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now hear from Ms. Christiane Taubira, former Minister of Justice of the French Republic. Bonjour, Madame.
Merci, Madame. Merci, Madame. Je peux vous rendre votre micro?
Oui, merci.
Merci. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Ghana, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadrices et ambassadeurs, as you all understood, I'm going to speak French, my official language. My native language is Creole. I left you time to put your... And I feel very emotional speaking here at this time, at this moment, on this issue. Je veux préciser pour la clarté des choses que les paroles que je pose ici sont les miennes en contribution de la réflexion collective sur ce drame historique qui nous préoccupe. La traite, que certains appellent négrière, et l'esclavage constituent un crime contre l'humanité. Je pose mes paroles ici, en contribution donc de cette réflexion collective, mais ce sont des paroles puisées dans l'expérience parlementaire que j'ai eue lors de la présentation de ce qui est devenu la loi française de reconnaissance de la traite et de l'esclavage en tant que crime contre l'humanité. Cette loi fut adoptée par le Parlement français en 2001 et depuis cette date, l'enseignement de cette histoire est obligatoire en France à tous les niveaux scolaires. Chaque année, la République française commémore cette histoire, la traite l'esclavage, les résistances sous toutes leurs formes et les abolitions. Chaque année, cette célébration donne lieu à la remise d'un prix à tous les niveaux scolaires qui s'appelle la flamme de l'égalité, the Flame of Equality. Cette même date de commémoration fait l'objet de la remise d'un prix du meilleur travail universitaire réalisé sur l'année sur ces sujets.
Of these iniquities are the children, the youths, who till today are being kidnapped and sent to the slave markets to be shared by their kidnappers. When I addressed the United Nations last year, I made a point of telling my audience that the slave trade is not over, but it is indeed very active. Even as I speak now, we have children, youths, school children who are being held in forest fastnesses destined for the slave markets, and who continue to regard their own citizens as just slaves, to be treated just to be treated. These are all consequences of a certain mental warp that has taken place in us, and not only on this continent, but in some place in the diaspora, as a result of that experience, that dehumanizing experience of being enslaved. And so I want to thank you, Mr. President, for this initiative. And I want to stress that any means that enable us to recover collectively the rehumanization even of memory, not just of the present, but even of memory, is essential to the development, collective development of those who've been traumatized as a people by this iniquitous commodity in human beings. Let us move mentally and practically towards the dynamizing of the commemoratives which exist. We have to move now beyond just the performances, the discussions, the rhetoric, even the economic aspects of a retrieval of an egalitarian relationship between us and them. We have to recognize the fact that even our mental conditioning is involved, and in the diaspora in particular. That is why the diaspora is such a critical aspect of this. That is why the door of return, as our colleague there has stressed, is more than just to certain values, certain humane values, which were distorted or simply totally wiped out of our collective appreciation of a reality of the world we inhabit. So I welcome all of you, and I promise you creation of a courageous resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gracious to be with me on the stage this morning or this afternoon once again. This is history in the making, Jerry, by the way. I've never actually co-hosted with you.
It's a gift to this generation and beyond. Please welcome the ever-brilliant
children of the transatlantic slave trade. I've done research to find out the truth. And when I did a DNA test, I found out that I am 46% Ghanaian. Yeah. So let the truth be told. Honorable Mama, last year, 2025, I was on tour, and the leader of the country of Antigua and Barbuda wrote a song called Reparations. Shortly after, in 2026, the Honorable boldly went before the United Nations and said, let's have a conversation. And I found I am not his the rod and we are Moses. Most Honorable Samuel, thank you again. Mia Matley, it's a joy to see you in Africa. Thank you for always doing what you do for the Caribbean. And most Honorable Miss Babsy Grange, wherever you are, thank you for always championing Jamaica. So I will sing this song for the people. Let's hear. Listen to the words. We shall be all right. Yeah. Don't you cry. It's time to change away all the tears from my eyes. The stars and the tides are behind. We know we shall win. We know it's better. Shall wash away all the tears. In this time of destruction, we must hold on firm. We got to get along. We've been over hurdles all of the mountain tops. So power on, we are marching on. We say, wash away all the tears from my eyes. In times when the storms and the tides are raging high, we know we shall win. We know it's certain. Jah shall wash away all the tears. Yeah. We know we must win the fight. Ooh. When the wicked try coming eat upon thy flesh, we know that He is the best. Over trials and tribulations, because Jah shall wash away from my eyes. The storms and the tides are raging high. We know we shall win. We know it's certain. Jah shall wash away all the tears. Keep on fighting and fighting. Yeah. Against the wicked high and low places. No matter what they do, no matter what they try, we shall overcome. Yeah. Because shall wash away all the tears from my eyes. In times when the storms and the tides are raging high, we know we shall win. We know it's certain. Shall wash away all the tears. Oh, shall wash away all the tears. Oh, we shall wash away the storms and the tides are raging high. We know we shall win. We know it's certain. Shall wash away all the tears. Oh, shall wash away all the tears. Yeah, man. And this one is from my Uncle Jay, reparations. Muhammad, do not stop the fight. As the elder said from Nigeria, we are all now in this fight together. There's no turning back now. Let's help them build a plan. As well as the children of the transatlantic slave trade need to heal, the children of the slave master need to heal. So we have to do it together. So I say Portugal, Netherlands, UK, Spain, all who had a hand in the transatlantic slave trade, Let us heal together. Listen to the words of this one. This is called Reparations, inspired by the Honorable Gaston Brown.
To protect our future generations.
Be silent. Then 100 years later, and
Colonisés se sont libérés. Ils ont hérité des dettes qui avaient été
thus we are here. And it is significant that Ghana has opened the door of return. Some 10 million of our people were shipped across the Atlantic to CARICOM. Another 10 million were shipped across the Atlantic to the Americas. Returning through this door of return is not just a history of that atrocity. What has returned is a level of consciousness returning through this door that will shape the world in this 21st century. Returning through this door is the CARICOM 10-point plan for global reparatory justice. But we always understood that what was taken out of Africa across the Atlantic was not just labor, not just enchained, enslaved labor, but what went across the Atlantic were also ideas, philosophies, humanity, arts, culture, all of that went across the Atlantic. And returning the CARICOM 10-point plan for global Africa represents all of those cosmologies. The resolution which was passed at the United Nations was therefore the result of a revolution. A revolution. A global revolution in global African consciousness that produced that resolution. And again, it is fitting that we are here in Ghana to plan the next steps. In the island of Barbados, our Prime Minister is here. It was the first colony in the Americas where Africans became the majority, Barbados. It was also this Barbados colony that was a Ghanaian colony, because the majority of the people there were Ga, Fanti, Santi. Barbados was Little Ghana. And it's interesting that here in Little Ghana, in 1675, that first generation of Ghanaians organize an island-wide revolution to overthrow chattel slavery. That revolution was defeated on the 12th of June, 1675. Kofi was going to be installed as the Asantehene of Barbados. They failed. And 25 of them were burnt alive in Barbados. It was the first burning of Ghanaians and Africans and a ritual in the Americas. So here we have returned with a 10-point plan. The result of resistance, the result of resilience. We, the historians, we have done the research. 40% of all the ships that took the enslaved Africans across the Atlantic experienced a rebellion of one kind or another. So the resistance started here. It continued on the slave ships. It continued in the colonies. So we are returning here as survivors of that revolution. Now, this door of return is therefore a door of dignity and critically a door of destiny. When all the European powers pass acts of emancipation, when all of them pass acts of emancipation, they denied the enslaved people reparations. Our foreparents asked for it. They demanded it. They petitioned the parliaments of Europe asking, if you are giving reparations to the enslavers, why are we, the enslaved, not receiving reparations? They petitioned the British Parliament, the French Parliament, the Dutch Parliament, the Danish Parliament. All of the parliaments of Europe were petitioned by those who were emancipated. Where is our reparations? The response was, from the parliaments of Europe, give your freedom, that is your reparations. Now be silent. Be silent. Then 100 years later, in the Caribbean, we demand, the Europeans told us, be silent. We are giving you sovereignty. Now be silent. And since you demanded it, you are now on your own. Again, we were denied with a resolution. Is why this moment will yield the results that we have been asking for 200 years. Now we're here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the utmost pleasure and honor to welcome on stage the writer, the playwright, the Nobel Laureate winner. Please welcome Wole Soyinka.
Greetings, Your Excellencies, Heads of State, Ministers, my comrades from all over the world, I wish to add to the welcome you received, my own personal welcome, the semi-Ghanaians, to the slave markets of this continent. If you make inquiries from Nigeria, where I come from the Department of the Diaspora, you will learn of even rescue chartered planes, which have managed to retrieve nationals from the slave markets and brought back to Nigeria. They arrived, unlike emotional returnees. The first action is a symbolic act of kneeling and kissing the ground from which they had been taken. But the most pernicious of these iniquities are the children, the youths, who till today are being kidnapped and sent to the slave markets to be shared by their kidnappers. When I addressed the United Nations last year, I made a point of telling my audience that the slave trade is not over, but it is indeed very active. Even as I speak now, we have children, youths, school children who are being held in forest fastnesses destined for the slave markets, and who continue to regard their own citizens as just slaves, to be treated just to be treated. These are all consequences of a certain mental warp that has taken place in us, and not only on this continent, but in some place in the diaspora, as a result of that experience, that dehumanizing experience of being enslaved. And so I want to thank you, Mr. President, for this initiative. And I want to stress that any means that enable us to recover collectively the rehumanization even of memory, not just of the present, but even of memory, is essential to the development, collective development of those who've been traumatized as a people by this iniquitous commodity in human beings. Let us move mentally and practically towards the dynamizing of the commemoratives which exist. We have to move now beyond just the performances, the discussions, the rhetoric, even the economic aspects of a retrieval of an egalitarian relationship between us and them. We have to recognize the fact that even our mental conditioning is involved, and in the diaspora in particular. That is why the diaspora is such a critical aspect of this. That is why the door of return, as our colleague there has stressed, is more than just to certain values, certain humane values, which were distorted or simply totally wiped out of our collective appreciation of a reality of the world we inhabit. So I welcome all of you, and I promise you creation of a courageous resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gracious to be with me on the stage this morning, or this afternoon, once again. This is history in the making, Jerry, by the way. I've never actually co-hosted with you.
It's a gift to this generation and beyond. Please welcome the ever-brilliant
Children of the transatlantic slave trade. I've done research to find out the truth. And when I did a DNA test, I found out that I am 46% Ghanaian. Yeah. So let the truth be told. Honorable Mama, last year, 2025,
Would you please rise and in solidarity, put your fist in the air, beat your chest with that fist, stamp your feet, and put your hands together for African unity, resilience, and growth. Please be seated. Many thanks to Your Excellency, Dr. Nutembu Ndiatwa, the President of the Republic of Namibia, for that very inspiring address. And now, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we shall hear from the President of the Republic of Liberia, His Excellency Joseph Nyuma Boakai, Sr.
Your Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished representatives of the African Union, CARICOM, CELAC, and the Global African Diaspora, the United Nations agencies and institutions, civil society, development partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address this conference and to serve on the Global Advisory Panel of the Repository Justice. I thank my brother and friend, John Mahama, and the government and the people of Ghana convening this important gathering. It is fitting that we meet on these historic shores, still marked by the memory of those who were torn from their homes, families, and communities and fought across the Atlantic. This suffering still calls us to confront one of history's gravest crimes against humanity. We gather to ensure that this resolution becomes not only a statement of historic recognition, but also a framework for truth, justice, healing, and institutional repairs. More than 500 years after the first victims were taken across the Atlantic, and 200 years after the trade was formally abolished, the adoption on March 26, 2026 of the United Nations resolution recognizing the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans among the gravest crimes against humanity marks a significant and necessary moral moment. We honor the millions who suffered and died, those who resisted and survived, and the descendants who continue to live with its effect. This resolution carries profound significance. It acknowledges the wrongs of the past and recognizes how the continuing vestiges of the Atlantic slave trade shape our present realities and influence the future of our one world. For Liberia, the legacy of transatlantic slave trade is woven into the fabric of our national story and continues to shape our understanding of identity, belonging, and nationhood. Our experience demonstrates that the consequences of slavery cannot be measured solely in terms of lost labor, stolen wealth, or economic deprivation. They also include intergenerational social, cultural, psychological, and political impact that can persist for centuries. If we are to pursue meaningful reparatory justice, our efforts must extend beyond financial considerations. They must also embrace historical truth-telling, reconciliation, identity restoration, cultural healing, education, institution building, and the strengthening of our social cohesion. As we consider the next steps following this historic resolution, Liberia offers its experience as evidence of justice, healing, and reconciliation are inseparable from the sustainable development and lasting peace. With this resolution now adopted, the question before us is simple. What must we do next? Allow me, therefore, to propose 5 priorities for implementation. First, we must develop a common African position and implementation framework in collaboration with the CLARICON and diaspora organizations, supported by a coordinated roadmap with clear priorities, responsibilities, and timeliness. Second, working with the United Nations, we should establish an African Union, United Nations Expert Commission to design a global reparatory justice mechanism. Third, we must confront misinformation and erasure through truth, education, and research by strengthening the teaching of African history, preserving archives, and supporting universities and research institutions across Africa and the diaspora. Fourth, repairing historical wrongs requires the restitution of stolen cultural artifacts and heritage objects, together with development partnership that address persistent inequalities rooted in slavery and its aftermath. The scale and depth of trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement cannot be measured fully in financial terms alone. Yet, the transatlantic slave trade, forced labor, and resource extraction generated enormous wealth that shaped the economic foundations of many societies across the world. There is no doubt that the slave trade and its aftermath contributed profoundly to the inequality and the underdevelopment in Africa and across the global South. The past has helped shape the inequalities of the present. Fifth, we call for development partnerships and a global initiative that address persistent inequalities and underdevelopment rooted in slavery and its aftermath, grounded in shared responsibility and mutual respect. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to all those across the world who seek to understand and engage honestly with this history, and to the nations and societies whose shared task is now to help chart the path forward, the call for reparatory justice is not an effort to assign personal guilt to the present generation for the sins of the past. Rather, it is a call for understanding, empathy, and willingness to confront uncomfortable truth. We invite our partners across the world to share in our anguish, to recognize the enduring consequences of the historic injustice, and to join in a common commitment to healing and repair. Together, let us forge a solemn pact that the dehumanization, exploitation, and racialized enslavement of any people shall never, ever again find refuge in our institution, our economies, or our collective conscience. Let this be a common promise to humanity and to generations unborn. History has brought us to a real defining moment. Future generations will judge us not by the eloquence of our declaration, but by the courage of our actions. This resolution has opened a door. Whether the door leads to meaningful justice, reconciliation, and healing now depends on our collective resolve. Let us not be remembered as another conference or another resolution that stirred consciences briefly before fading into history. Let it be remembered as a moment when the world chose truth over silence, justice over hesitation, and moral courage over the comfort of the status quo. Today, through us, those voices speak again. They call not for vengeance, but for recognition, not for division, but for reconciliation, not for charity, but for justice. Let us therefore leave Accra united in purpose and committed to ensuring that the gravest crime against humanity is met with one of the humanity's greatest responses, a determined global effort to restore dignity, repair historical wrongs, and build a future founded on equality, shared prosperity, and our common humanity. If we succeed, generations yet unborn will remember that this moment we chose not simply to remember history, but to help shape it. May God bless us, and I wish my friend and brother John Mahama congratulations for his success and the winning of a very, very important match last night. May God bless us all.
The President of the Republic of Liberia, His Excellency Joseph Nyuma Boakai Sr. Please, a round of applause. Shortly, we get to hear from our convener, the President of our Republic, who will also establish the global panels comprising Advisory Council on Reparatory Justice, the Expert Panel on Restitution of Cultural Artifacts, a panel on legal experts for reparatory justice, and then see for ourselves, live and in living color, a true symbol of restitution made here in Accra. Before that, however, we have a few remarks. Let's now receive the Prime Minister, I beg your pardon, the President of the Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe, His Excellency Carlos Manuel Villanova, for his address.
Excellences, Monsieur le Président de la République du Ghana, Mesdames, Monsieur le chef d'État, chef de gouvernement,
marking a historic step in the international community's acknowledgement of the scale, brutality.
Black. Those who feel ashamed and unfared by reason of the treatment that our people have had meted out to them, and regrettably, through the systems and corridors of power that still reflect first class and second class citizens of the world. I believe that our working together with the CARICOM 10-point plan on reparatory justice, which has been revised and which we have brought some copies here to share in Accra, will add to the excellent work which you are doing and the establishment of the committees that will carry on the work for our people. These committees, however, will only mean something if we can stay together united and not allow division yet again to be the anchor for those who want to win against us. This is not a quick journey. In 1896, 130 years ago, the Battle of Adwa was won, and the beginning of the Pan-Africanist movement took root. Almost 70 years ago, in this country, Ghana, you summoned the world to join you as you embarked on the journey of nationhood and independence. Today, in 2026, President Mahama, you have summoned us again to join you. And we, the children of Africa and its diaspora, are clear as to our responsibility and are clear that even though journeys are not always finished by the same people, even though battles are not won by those sometimes who started, that our duty nevertheless must be resolute and our commitment and solidarity unshakable. I have every confidence that we will come to understand that the union of Africa and the Caribbean can bring prosperity and stability to our people. But we cannot do so if we choose only to wait on others to determine reparations. In our own individual countries, the process to development is an act of reparation alone. In my own country, we provide free pre-primary to tertiary education, free health care, and equally, we have undertaken one of the most ambitious forms of land redistribution in the Americas, recognizing that we cannot ask others before we do for ourselves that which is our duty. Once that is done, then we have a responsibility to work together, to bring development to our people. This continent of Africa has been blessed with much, and it is blessed with the development of the demographic bounty, people that will help the 21st century work out the difficulties that we face today. The world is troubled, but we have a pathway through reparations for ourselves, by ourselves, to start the process. And once that process is started, then it becomes easier for us to engage, not as an act of charity, as you have heard from these platforms, but as an act of justice. Not as a request for war or divisiveness, but as the start for an era of enlightenment and a healing that will allow us to show the rest of the world what we all know, that when human beings live together, see each other, feel each other, hear each other, share with each other, a better world can be had. I call upon us here not to treat to this as just simply another event, but to recognize that in all that we do, domestically and internationally, that the time has come to remake and reshape the rules that allow our people to be seen, heard, and felt. And it shall only come if we remain resolute in that journey. President Mahama, the people of the Caribbean have come to join hands. Our CARICOM 10-point plan did not just drop out of the wilderness. We ask specifically in this plan, and I share with you the details of that request. A full and formal apology by those responsible. An Indigenous Peoples Development Program, for we must never forget the genocide of our Indigenous people that took place even before the institution of slavery was started. The repatriation and resettlement of our people for those who want. The restitution of cultural heritage and cultural reconnection. The remedying of the public health crisis that was as a result of centuries of exploitation. The capacity building and development through education and training that is so necessary to correct the deficit which we inherited at independence. The compensation for gender-based violence and assault on family, no different from the compensation that has been awarded to other nationalities such as the Japanese. Psychological rehabilitation. The right to sovereignty and development through technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And my friends, yes, in the spirit of the Bridgetown Initiative, debt cancellation, monetary compensation, and decolonization. I share these things and topics with you because in this room, each one of us can find common purpose with at least one or more of the requests of the Caribbean community. And I ask us, therefore, let us not embark on separate journeys, but let us today reflect the unity of purpose, the recognition that whether it is through advocacy or advisory opinions or actions, our role is to ensure that there is no retreat from our requests and that we recognize that repair comes after recognition. For in all that we do in the rest of our lives, where damage is perpetrated, repair is always, always required. May God bless Africa and the Caribbean. May God bless Ghana and Barbados. May God bless each of us and give us the resolve to continue this battle, conscious that in Adwa 130 years ago,
Africa, claiming back its glory. We're joined by the government of the French Republic, here represented by a delegation. It's my pleasure to acknowledge the delegation before we hear from the President of the Republic. Would you please make welcome speaking? Let's just go straight to the video. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic.
Monsieur le Président de la République du Ghana, cher John Dramani Mahama,
for the Honorable Minister Ablakwa, whose principled militancy and strategic clarity have helped to carry this message across the world. Jamaica further acknowledges with gratitude the members of the Ghana Armed Forces Engineering Corps, whom were deployed to support relief and recovery efforts in Jamaica in the aftermath of the most devastating hurricane ever to impact the Caribbean. That the Black Star continues to shine as After Our Line helped to inspire Ghana's Black Star and the very idea of Africa and her diaspora moving us. But as experiences, yet we are bound by one story and by a crime scene that began on this continent centuries ago and expanded across the Atlantic. The capture, trafficking, chattelization, and enslavement of African peoples and people of African descent constituted the greatest crime against humanity. Systems were deliberately constructed to extract wealth from African bodies and from the Caribbean and from the Americas to which we were taken, to suppress African identity and to secure the permanent subjugation of African peoples. But our ancestors survived. They resisted. They endured, created, innovated, and triumphed. That horror emerged a new kind of African soldier, armed not with chains, but with memory. So we are the children of those who would not bow. And we stand here as their living petition to the world. So, as Marley said, old pirates, yes, they robbed and sold us to the merchant ship. They took us to the bottomless pit. But our hand was made strong by the hand, and we know Sankofa to sing the redemption song, songs of freedom, songs of justice. This gathering must therefore be understood as part of a larger journey of reunification. It is not a single event. It is one important step among many as African people and people of African descent come together to shape our common future and advance our common cause. We must recognize that the crime did not affect all our communities in identical ways. Many remained under of enslavement and colonialism in the Caribbean, the Americas, and beyond. Entire nations in the Caribbean, were built directly on the crime scene itself, home to the gravest atrocities and brutality inflicted unjustly and unconscionably by man to man. Our injuries are therefore layered, binds the African family together in this struggle for repair of these atrocities and their enduring legacies. So together, yes, we will reclaim our memory, our identity, and live our common purpose as masters of our identity, our identity, technology, restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, the cessation of ongoing harm, guarantees of recognition, justice, and development. Recognition must include a clear acknowledgement of the immeasurable contribution of African peoples and their descendants across every field of human endeavor. Our creativity and innovation has an indelible print on the world, for too long without the credit. Part of the repair we seek must therefore be the full new paradigms to yield equality, justice, and prosperity for people. Straight or path, detailed strategic planning, and collective action must characterize this next phase. My Prime Minister is pleased to accept His Excellency's kind invitation to sit as a member on the high-level Global Advisory Council on Reparatory Justice. And so, the first, who, in establishing the Organization of African Unity on May 25, 1963, urged us toward a united Africa, become more courageous, greater in spirit and larger in outlook, that we must overcome petty prejudice and owe our ultimate allegiance not to narrow interests, but to our fellow human beings in the wider humanity and community. So Jamaica pledges its full support to this process. We offer our solidarity as well as our intellectual capital, our experience, our scholarship, and our advocacy. Jamaica stands ready to work with Ghana, with Africa, with Caribbean, and with African descent communities across the globe to advance the common action. We pledge to play our part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race. Up, you mighty race. One love, one heart, one goal, one aim, one destiny. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Jamaica. In conforming to our time-tested traditions, I shall give precedence to ministers of state, and I will proceed to give the floor to deputy ministers, and then our distinguished ambassadors and high commissioners, in that order of precedence, which, as you know, is our tradition at these meetings. So that agreed, kindly permit me to invite Her Excellency Teresa Kayikwamba Wagner, Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Francophonie of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Thank you for the floor. His Excellency Mr. John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, their excellent heads of state and government, distinguished representatives of international and regional organizations, ladies, warm welcome extended to us and for the organization of this important conference, which has placed reparatory justice at the heart of our continental political agenda. The unity of the exceptional gravity of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and of the ritual chattel enslavement of Africans. It is a recognition owed to his collective memory and, above all, to the dignity of the vote on this resolution is also instructive on movement of conscience. At the same time, the abstentions and the votes again remind us acknowledgement of the facts. It is the acceptance of responsibility for their consequences. This is why our efforts must be precise. We are not asking the world to reopen history in order to divide humanity. We're asking the world to confront history in order to restore humanity. This is the international community has in other contexts understood that crimes of exceptional gravity require exceptional responses. Truth, accountability, guarantees of non-repetition, and reparative measures. The question before us, therefore, is not whether reparatory justice is possible. The question is whether the dignity of African peoples and people of African descent will be treated with the same seriousness, the same universality, and the same moral courage. Because human dignity is not selective. It is universal, indivisible, inherent, and inalienable. And justice cannot depend on whose suffering the world finds easier to recognize or more convenient to repair. Recognition, therefore, cannot be an end in itself. Memory without justice remains an open wound. Justice without action remains an unfulfilled promise. The time has now come to transform historical recognition into a genuine program of action, one capable of addressing the structural imbalances inherited from the past and of promoting fair, equitable, and sustainable reparations for the benefit of Africa and people of African descent. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue holds particular significance for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. For our country, the history of slavery is not confined to one coast, one route, or one century. Peoples who have inhabited the territories that today form the Democratic Republic of the Congo were affected from more than one direction and across more than one historical period. To the west, the Kingdom of Congo and the wider West Central African region were drawn early into the transatlantic slave trade. To the east, the tragedy took another form. In the 19th century, slave and ivory caravans linked to the Indian Ocean penetrated deep into eastern Congo, particularly in the regions of West Lake Tanganyika and along the upper Congo River. At a time when abolition was already being proclaimed elsewhere, communities in our region continued to face raiding, forced labor, and displacement. This prolonged and multi-directional predation left consequences that cannot be measured only in numbers. They're measured in families separated, communities uprooted, societies destabilized, institutions weakened, and generations deprived of the right to shape their own destiny. Nor did this history of extraction end with slavery. It continued through colonialism, and it survives today in certain forms of economic predation. For too long, Africa's wealth has contributed to the prosperity of others without equitably benefiting African peoples themselves. The Democratic Republic of the Congo knows this reality intimately. Our country possesses strategic resources that are essential to the global energy transition. Yet millions of Congolese continue to suffer the tragic consequences of recurring armed conflict with significant loss of life, massive population displacement, and persistent humanitarian crisis. For us, therefore, reparatory justice is not solely about the past, it is about building a more just future. It is about the right of African peoples to benefit fully from their resources, their heritage, and their human potential. But it is also about our ability to confront the injustices of the present with the same clarity that we demand for injustices of the past. We cannot denounce the violence once inflicted upon Africans while accepting that Africans inflict violence upon other Africans today. We can speak of justice while remaining silent wealth of a nation exploited under the cover of armed aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, it is in this spirit that the Democratic Republic of the Congo fully supports the implementation of Resolution A/Res/8250. But implementation must reflect the full meaning of reparatory justice. Reparations cannot be reduced to a financial question alone. They must also address the deeper structures through which historical injustice continues to produce inequality, exclusion, and dependency. This requires a comprehensive approach. The restitution of African cultural heritage, the preservation of sites of memory, the transfer of knowledge and technology, equitable access to development financing, the strengthening of institutional capacities, and the promotion of education, research, and historical memory. More than ever, Africa must speak with one voice. The pursuit of reparatory justice is directed neither against any people nor against any nation. It is not an exercise in revenge, nor an undertaking of division. It is a demand for justice, truth, dignity, and shared development. In this regard, the DRC supports the initiation of discussions on the establishment of an international fund for reparatory justice under the auspices of the United Nations and in close coordination with the African Union. Such a mechanism could help finance priority projects in education, health, infrastructure, economic development, institutional capacity building, and others. The Democratic Republic of the Congo also supports the establishment of a regular monitoring mechanism for the implementation of the resolution, including through periodic reports by the Secretary General of the United Nations in coordination with the African Union and relevant institutions of the United Nations system. Ladies and gentlemen, the measure of this conference will not be the strength of our words, but the courage of our follow-through. Let this moment mark not only the recognition of a historical wrong, but the beginning of a new international compact rooted in truth, dignity, and responsibility. Let it affirm that memory must lead to reparation, that reparation must support development, and that development must serve and generation. Let us act with the seriousness that history demands and with the conviction that justice delayed must no longer mean justice denied. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Republic of Congo. I shall now give the floor to the Honorable Dauda Jallo, the learned Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Republic of Gambia.
Thank you very much, our host, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Ghana, colleague ministers and heads of delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and privilege to participate in this historic high-level consultative conference on next steps to the landmark United Nations resolution on the trafficking of enslaved Africans. I bring warm greetings from His Excellency Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, and the government and people of the Republic of the Gambia. His Excellency to the people of Ghana, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, the government and people of the Republic of Ghana. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the government and people of the Republic of Ghana for the warm hospitality extended to me and my delegation, and for the excellent arrangements made for this important gathering. Ghana occupies a special place in the history of Africa's liberation and Pan-Africanism. It was from this land that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah inspired generations of Africans and people of African descent to believe in the ideals of freedom, dignity, unity, and self-determination. It is therefore fitting that Ghana once again leads an important global conversation on justice and its diaspora, a cause that transcends borders and generations. Through this conference, we have an opportunity not merely to reflect on the painful history of trafficking and enslavement of Africans, but to chart a practical path towards justice, healing, and restoration. For the Gambia, this issue is profoundly significant. Our history is inseparable from the history of the transatlantic slave trade. The River Gambia serves as one of the principal routes through which countless African men, women, and children were forcibly removed from their homeland. Kunta Kinte Island, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, remains a solemn reminder of this tragic chapter in human history and stands today as a symbol of resilience, remembrance, and the enduring spirit of African people. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I commend the Republic of Ghana under the leadership of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, for spearheading this initiative and for building momentum following the historic adoption of the United Nations General Assembly resolution, which recognizes the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. This resolution represents more than historical recognition. It is a moral political commitment to address the enduring consequences of slavery, colonialism, and systemic racial discrimination that continues to affect Africans and people of African descent across the world. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the discussions undertaken during senior officials and technical experts meeting have provided a solid foundation for our work. They reaffirm the importance of advancing a comprehensive framework for reparatory justice built upon acknowledgement, apology, restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, institutional reform, and guarantees of non-repetition. The Gambia strongly supports of proposed high-level Global Advisory Council on Reparatory Justice, the Global Legal Panel on Reparatory Justice, and the Global Expert Panel on Restitution of Cultural Property. These institutions will be essential in transforming our collective aspirations into practical and measurable outcomes. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, a resolution is a promise, a conference is a conversation, but justice, reparative justice, requires implementation. Therefore, Our task over the coming days is to translate moral consensus into measurable mechanisms. We must answer three urgent questions. Firstly, how do we establish a permanent resourced UN mechanism to document the full scale of trafficking of enslaved Africans, including not limited to names, origins, routes that have been erased from official records? Secondly, how do we operationalize the right to remedy for descendants communities, including through dedicated funds for health, education, infrastructure, and psychological restoration? Thirdly, how do we compel member states and private institutions that benefited from enslavement to disclose historical records and contribute to a global reparative justice fund? To that end, my delegation puts forward the following concrete proposals for consideration. Establishment of a permanent UN archive and reparative commission modeled on existing transitional justice mechanisms. This commission would receive testimonies, gather financial and shipping records, and produce a binding public register of beneficiaries of slave trade. Creation of a global reparative justice fund financed through voluntary contributions and crucially through mandatory levies on institutions and states that have acknowledged historical benefit. These resources must be governed by affected states and diaspora communities, not traditional donors. We cannot speak of the past without confronting the present. The racial wealth gap, unequal health outcomes, systemic violence, the persistent division of African lives globally are direct legacies of trafficking. Must include binding commitments to measure and rectify these disparities, including through development assistance targeted at communities of descent and through diplomatic and economic measures against ongoing forms of exploitation and racial discrimination. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, some will say this agenda is too ambitious. We say transatlantic slave trade was the most ambitious, unindustrialized system of atrocity the world has ever known. If humanity can organize to enslave millions across centuries, solely humanity can organize to repair. The landmark UN resolution opened the door. The conference must now walk through it. Let's leave here not with a communique of vague intention, but with a timeline, a mandate, and a fundable work plan. In conclusion, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, allow me to reiterate Gambia's remain fully committed to working with all partners to advance this noble cause and to secure a future founded on dignity, equality, opportunity for Africans and people of African descent everywhere. I thank you for your kind attention.
We are grateful to the Gambia. I shall now invite the Honorable Rahel Barros de Oliveira, Minister of Racial Equality of the Federative Republic of Brazil. Can we have assistance from technicians?
Know what the struggle. Président de la République du Bénin, ainsi que ses remerciements chaleureux pour rétablir.
So mean healing from centuries of violence, healings for inherited trauma, healing from structure that continue to deny Black women the right to dignity, beauty, freedom, and self-determination. When African women rise, community rise. Democracy deepens, development accelerates, and humanity itself becomes stronger. There is another historic imperative before us. The implementation of this resolution must become a central pillar of the reform of the United Nations system. If the international community truly seeks a more democratic and representative multilateral order, then reparatory justice for the greatest crime against humanity cannot remain at the margins of the global agenda. It must stand in the center. We are speaking about the future of more than 1.5 billion of African people and people of African descent. No more meaningful reform of global governance can ignore such a significant proportion of the humanity. Therefore, respectfully call upon the next Secretary General of the United Nations to make an explicit commitment to placing the implementation of this resolution alongside the Sustainable Development Goals, the Pact of the Future, and the Global Climate Agenda as one of the defining priorities of our time. Because financial resources, political will, institution commitment, international cooperation, and measurable action capable to guaranteeing comprehensive and sustained reparation for the well-being of flourishing of African people and people of African descent. The lesson that has brought us this is simple. We succeeded because we worked together. The next stage requires even greater unity. We must strengthen the alliances between Africa and its global diaspora. We must mobilize government, university, financial institutions, civil society, Jews, entrepreneurs, faith communities, and traditional leaders around one common purpose. Above all, African and Afro-descendant women and men must profoundly carry forward the banners of race by Kwame Nkrumah and Marcus Garvey, the banners of unity, dignity, self-determination, and shared destiny. Our ancestors dream of a future they would never live to see. We are that future. And this resolution gives us the opportunity to advance toward a new global humanitarian pact founded on justice, historical truth, solidarity, equity, and shared prosperity. A pact capable to repairing the unacceptable consequences of slavery and transatlantic trade in enslaved African while transforming humanity itself. Brothers and sisters, we are building a luminous future. And because we have clarity, vision, teamwork, and leadership inspired by Ubuntu. I am because we are the generation as trust to dignity, to justice, to freedom, and the good life that every human being deserves. May history remember that this generation transformed recognition in action, that transformed memory into justice, that build unity across continent, and that is finally fulfill a moral obligation that humanity has postponed for far too long. Thank you so much.
Okay, veteran Smith, we have roughly 16 minutes to go. Veteran, if you are there, we have 16 minutes to go. Yes. What would be your analysis, and what do you have to say about the very little that spoke from their country, and when it comes to the Pan Africa activities? Virgin, are you there? Okay, so folks, if you are out there, would like to say you are most welcome. You are listening to A Better D for your regular program. We were told to play this, yes, indeed, for every one of us to listen to it. And it's very important for every one of us. Some of you not go across it, or you go across it, but and listen to it. It's not a control or activity for tomorrow. But if you listen to all of the speaker, they are putting Africa, putting Africa first. And it seems to be all of them speaking in the same tone, like you listen to the Excellency Dr. Joseph Nyimambo. Join hands together in Africa. We will enjoy Africa, because the Africans are rich in everything you think about. That's the reason this morning you listen to Mr. Zaza on the podium that talk about you can buy soil before they plant thing in the yard. But here we don't have to buy soil. We can buy soil. We get a land here and live over. See the bush or the grass that we have in Zwaju, except the capital city. People have land all in the center of the town. They don't even allow people to plant greens, corn, cassava. I don't think about the forest. Forest not far away from us. People can just walk right by in Zwaju to find wood. So simply mean we have land that is all over. So like if you listen to the speakers, the presidents from various countries, and some of them are represented by the ministers, but they are seeking with their covering in Ghana. I think the way they talking, for them to look on people and talk it very easy. That's the problem we have. Look at there tonight. Yes, indeed. We pass the time. We have 12 minutes. So let's go for our team song. Yeah, let's go for our team song. If we come back, I think we can call it a date.
We beg to be first. We beg to be first. When the issues get hot, when the debates get tough, when opinions collide and the truth must rise, this is the program where voices are heard. Default. Hosted by Sheku Roma. Shirai by IP
That's it. Right. We have program tonight. Thank you so much. Our panelists are very tied up. And then, as you can see now, I think it's the time for all to go. So we say thank you. I better take break. I'm going to be back tomorrow, the same time, the same station. Have a great and beautiful time. Bye-bye. We are out for today.
TOP FM